Hi everyone! So today I'm going to do something a little bit different in today's video, and I'm going to show you how to draw a face, or at least how to draw a skull and then to map a face onto it, which is the way that I've kind of been learning and getting better at drawing faces over the last year. And I thought you could find it interesting because there's a lot of videos where they explain, hey, you know, if you learn to draw a skull, that will make you better at drawing faces, but I don't think many of them show you, well, why does that make you better? Because of course, learning how to understand how the bones and how the muscles are working under the face are going to help you to map out a face. Yeah, you're going to understand it better, but I think it can be used as a good guideline if you're really just kind of like me and you find it quite hard to build up a face. So I'm just going to show you that now. I'm going to do it in like normal real time, like I am doing now, showing you how to draw a skull, or at least how I draw a skull in a very simple way. Then I'm going to sketch out a few different types, and then I'm going to start showing you again in real time how do you map on a face onto that, and then just try it with a few different ideas. So first things first, I'm just going to draw a basic skull. So it's probably easiest to start with face forward. Then, because you've got your eye sockets here, there's always a bit of bone underneath those eye sockets. Then, I don't know if you'll see this often, but this is like your brow bone. I'm just going to put that there. And normally it's about like the centre of that square. There's our rough brow bone. These obviously aren't going to be like amazing drawings, but then you've got your nose. Now this kind of changes depending on what ethnicity you're really drawing. Because if you're drawing an Asian face, you'd probably lower that about here. It's basically in Western faces you would normally see that line. That's where the nose would reach to. In Asian faces, about here. But this, if you look, that would be the bone above it. If that makes sense, that's where the nose, like the bridge of the nose, is going to hit. So there's our little like nose hole. Okay, so then taking off there, when it gets to about, you see this angle we just made here? I'm just going to bring that down. And then I see it as like that kind of shape, sad face. But then it gets up a little bit on each end. You've got your set of teeth, which, I'll be honest, I'm not going to draw in each one. I just kind of do it like that. In, out. We're just joining up our jawbone. And that's kind of like a rough idea of it. Now, immediately, two things I notice. This skull isn't right. So, clean up where your shapes are going wrong. You can see, like, proportionally in the end, what these are supposed to look like. And I'd say that's kind of like a rough idea. You've got, like, if you wanted to add your teeth roughly there. I mean, obviously, this is going to depend on the face you're drawing. But this is kind of like our basic guideline of what are we going to map everything onto. Because you can play at this stage with how your overall faces are going to start looking. Like you could make these a bit wider if you wanted to. If you wanted larger eyes, you could, like, you know, like we were saying, upper and lower that. We could increase the head size if we're going to, I don't know, make aliens, I don't know. But this is kind of like a rough idea, I would say, of how I would sketch a skull. And the other thing I would add, and this is more because I'm terrible with sorting out pupils and where the eyes are looking in the face, I would actually add the eyeballs, which I know makes them look a bit creepy. But basically creating the eyeballs. And then because he's looking directly at us, there's his little pupils. Absolutely terrifying. But that's basically it. Now, if you see, this is where I would scroll, because that one is looking directly at you. This guy's looking over here. That pupil should be about there. And see, by doing it at such an early stage, I was able to notice that straight away. If I started drawing that just like rough hand without a skull, I would mess that up, definitely, because the whole pupil should really be a little bit over that way. And yeah, so now you've got your basic skull. So now I'm just going to draw like a few more, speed that all up, and then we're going to come back and we're going to just draw a face over it. Okay, so now we've got 3 separate skulls here. And there's little things that I would like to add, just that I was thinking about then. One in particular would be this skull shape here. Now, I think that this is probably the hardest part to like evaluate and scale when you're first picking it up. I would say that like if you're looking to make like say a really hyper realistic skull, it's a good thing to do, and I wouldn't defer anyone or like try and deter anyone from doing it, but I would say that like kind of learn general scaling rules, or like think about the character that you're trying to make at the end. That bit's going to probably be a bit easier to tell by the end of this, but basically I would say make this larger than you think it should be, because normally it's going to help you, and a lot of its use is going to become apparent when you start sketching hair. So I'm just going to say that for now. Like this, even now, should probably be a bit higher. And also you might have added these little bits here. This is that bit of the skull here, and we're going to see it if we did that. See, that's probably the easiest way. Another thing that can help that will come up is you see this like little bit of cheekbone here. Our ears are normally about here, and it can be nice to have this kind of guiding line later on to help us with where ears should be. And also, like take this one, okay. I'm just kind of like just sketching it and feeling it out. And one of the main thoughts I had was keep lots of angles. I think it's really easy with faces to keep everything very smooth, like this kind of idea. But when you're just kind of like sketching from memory and trying to imagine like how skulls work, you're kind of in your messy stage right now. Like that jawbone could go around here a little bit more. That means it has to go around here a little bit more. That means that can go there. But with straight lines, that's a lot easier to like imagine a geometric shape, like just in space. So I think that that can be really beneficial as well. Get used to like drawing in squares almost, because squares are going to make this a lot easier to imagine when you're first starting out. So now that we've got 3 skulls, let's start trying to sketch over it. So I've done all this in this like Prismacolor, like polychromatic pencil. And the reason I'm doing that is because, for one, if I scanned it in, it wouldn't be really obvious and you wouldn't be able to see it very clearly. And for 2, it's going to help when we're sketching over with a pencil to be able to see our guidelines, but they're not going to be so like obtrusive, I guess. You're going to be able to still see the drawing that you have underneath. So one thing that I would recommend doing would be, to be honest, if you don't have a Pinterest or you're not really that interested, just get up a Google image account. But if you do have a Pinterest, it's really easy to just look up like portrait, male or female portrait, like, you know, different ethnicities if you're trying to focus on that, just to get like a panel of faces. And any that interest you, then you can just start up a different group or a different board and just kind of save them all there. That's kind of what I've done. And I'll provide a link to my Pinterest below so that you can just kind of get a reference and like just use it as a resource, because it's just kind of useful to have lots of faces and to be able to use them. So I'm just going to take some of them and directly draw them onto these skulls. Ones that are basically the same direction. I'll reorientate anything that doesn't seem right. So with the face on one, which is probably the easiest way of explaining a lot of these things, there's just basically general rules that you can use the skull for to help you shape it. So one in particular for me is eyes. You kind of want them to look really similar, but then at the same time, in reality, no one's eyes are actually the same shape and size. It's just kind of a a weird little change. So you don't have to worry too much, but it's nice to have them kind of similar. So the way that I would kind of imagine it is, you see how we've got our eyeball here? What I do is I do like a little dot where I'm imagining that little inner corner of the eye is going to be. I then imagine in space that I'm going to have to reach about here. That's going to be the ends of the eye. And I'm going to like plot them across. Now I can see where I'm aiming for. And the way of imagining this is the skin is almost draped over your eyeball. Which just sounds a bit creepy, but it is. So depending on how protuberant your eyeball is or how tight the skin is going to depend on whether you have like a lid crease and certain things like that. Again, this is kind of a difference between ethnicities, and it's something you can play around with your characters or different things like that. So the way I'd imagine it is the skin is kind of getting pulled between these 2 points over this protuberant eyeball. It's kind of hard to imagine, I guess, because it's not 3D, but that's kind of how you've got to imagine it in your head. So as you can see, I've just kind of like pulled that skin over there now. So let's take the lower eyelid. Now these are obviously quite large eyes, but I'm just kind of trying to show you a general idea. Okay, so now we've got this general eyelid shape. The second thing I would say is there's certain like little bits to do with eyes. So I've kind of done both of these the same line way, and that's not necessarily true, because we've just said that this skin overlaps over the eyeball, haven't we? Well, that would mean the skin that is below is going to show the thickness of the skin. So if you actually look at a pair of eyes, there's actually a much thinner skin layer going from here that sits underneath it. And that's the layer of skin that you see, and you're seeing underneath the eyelid. We all have it, so don't think it's that creepy. But that is what you're kind of looking at. So there is almost like a thinner eyeline. So this is kind of your lash line. This is kind of where the actual skin is. And really, I'm going to make these a bit creepy. They're not going to be like the cutest drawings in the world, but it's more trying to show guide of why these things work. So then let's take your pupil. So the pupil is always a little bit larger, I would say, than what you draw. But it's good when you're trying to work directions to do a small circle, or at least I find it to be. And it kind of sits a little bit under that skin. So now we're just kind of like taking that space where it is. That's going to be a darker colour. And there's kind of like our idea of an eye. And again, repeat on the other side. And like I say, don't worry about it being perfect, because it doesn't matter. Because they aren't perfect in real life. God, that turned a bit Bob Ross then, didn't it? Don't worry about it, guys. I'm going to talk in a really soft, nice voice. Right. So that's roughly where they are. And now we've got like our inner circle. Again, kind of nice to like give an idea of where that circle's going to be, just for us later on. Okay, so now the next part. If you notice, we've got our eyeballs still, and this is where the effort of eyeball creases and certain things like that. So the eyeball crease, if you look where that line of the eyeball is, it's going to hit about there, isn't it? And that's us just going around where the eyeball is. Again. And this is kind of, again, where you can have some fun. If you make their eyeballs like really high, you're going to have really high eyelid creases. If you're going to make them flatter in space, these might not even exist. It just depends how you're going to do them. And again, you've got this kind of under eyelid area. And this again kind of like depends what you're going to do. Like if you're doing like a woman, you might try and add a bit of like eye bags. That's what you want to do. I'm just going to do like a rough idea of like that's the area of skin underneath the eye. And when it comes to eyelashes, just to finish off this area of the eyes, you're kind of just wanting to do a flick. So your eyelash kind of goes underneath this level of skin and flicks up. And you just kind of like, you don't want them to be perfect, depending on how you want it to look. But that's kind of like a rough idea of where your eyelash is going to be. So that's our rough idea there. And like I was saying, this is where your eyelash is going to come from. Not this inner eyelid. They're going to come from the outside of the skin, aren't they? So again. Are we all looking alright? We're looking roughly like an eye. That's a good sign. So let's go on and move on to eyebrows just to finish off eyes. Now I was talking about this being like a brow line, and I think that this is probably the easiest way of looking at it. Now depending on how deep or like how flat you make this could be depending on how your brows are going to look. I kind of use them as guideline in a way. So if this is where our eyebrow begins, we take this line here, we take about there. I'd say normally eyebrows are going to end up about here, so maybe like lining up roughly with your nose. So that's where they are. And I'm kind of in the area of do lines for eyebrows, but I would do a shape first. So for this one, an eyebrow is kind of like a really different depending on person. So you're kind of like open to interpretation. I'm just going to do like a very rough idea. In general, they're a bit thicker around there and they go off. They taper off to the ends. We're just doing a rough idea of where the eyebrow shape is going to be. And we're just going to end them around that end of the eyes. Again, they don't really have to be that identical. It's kind of like a nice thing about faces, is they're not very identical. Okay, so now we've got a rough idea of where they are. The heaviest part of an eyebrow is usually about this area. It's like directly above where the pupils are, I would say. So when you're doing your lines, always good to like just kind of imagine where the skin is going to pull those hairs from. So that'd be kind of just a rough idea. But like we say, we know that this area is going to be thicker. We've already kind of plotted that out, and that's because normally the direction of the hair starts changing. So if all the front is in that direction, pulling towards the nose, when it gets to about this point, it has to start changing direction, doesn't it? It starts to go like a fan. And then it goes off again. So that's why it ends up quite a bit thicker in that part. So hopefully that made sense. In that direction, they'll go that way. In that direction, they'll go in the opposite way. And in this centre part is where it's almost like a fan. That's where it's thickening up. So if you were going to oversimplify this or like, you know, make it more cartoony, you just do like a blob here. That's where the hair would appear. Now once you've got a rough idea for your eyebrows, we're going to use them to help us guide where the nose is going to be. So we take it almost like this. Again, hard and fast general rules. This is all going to be up to you and who you're drawing. But I would say if you can line up roughly these ideas, that's normally a nice bit of skin that you can bring down from. We know that it's roughly going to end up around here because there's the hole and there's the skin level. And then we know that these little protuberant bits are where our nostrils are going to be. So for this girl, I think the trick of noses, or I would say personally, my trick with noses, is very little of it is going to be drawn in lines. Say if you're only doing this as line art, very little of it would be a solid black line. It's what's the pain about them really. I think that's why they're so hard to draw. So there's our little nose holes, you see? We'll just line them up a little bit with the bottom of those. There's our little nostrils. They're kind of the only bits that are really dark. If you look at someone's face or you look at your own face, your nostrils are really the only dark part of your nose. The rest is going to be shading. So really, you've just got the under part here, connects them. Notice I'm going to do this in a lighter pencil, so hopefully it's picking up. Then you've got the nostril shape around it. So again, we're just kind of tucking a bit of skin. A lot of this is kind of like imagining something in 3D space, and it's imagining a soft object in 3D space. That's why it's such a pain to draw. Then, underneath this space, normally this area of your nose is protruding, isn't it? So in general, that area is going to be light. This space under here will be dark, so shaded. I'm just going to do a bit of light shading there. You see? We're keeping that all bright. This area of skin would be a bit darker, wouldn't it? Because that area of skin would be seen. So really we've kind of got that general shape there of lighter skin. And then in general, because this bit of skin is protruding, this part normally goes down and gets deeper. So using that line that we've just made, we shade that in as well. Depending on how deep you want that to be, you could end it about here. If the nose is going to be a short nose, if it's going to be a long nose, you could go all the way up there. It depends. We're just going to shade in there. So that's kind of like how the nose works. You kind of have to shade a nose because they just don't really work otherwise. And again, if you were shading it, this area would obviously be deeper than this area. So it's kind of like working out those things in space. Now, using your nose, it's kind of nice to like work down the face, if that makes sense. A lot of things are all interconnected, so it's kind of nice to work down a face. So then we take this, so we've got your cleft lip. I don't know what it is called. I know you get a cleft lip if you don't have it. These are your clefts. Anyway, that would go down from the bottom of these nostrils. Like a little diamond. So that's there. These are kind of going down there. They don't really matter. I wouldn't really draw them. I'm just kind of showing you lightly where they are to help you guide the lips. Then your lip. I'm going to draw a woman because they're a little bit easier to draw in terms of showing proportions, because normally women have larger lips, so they're a little bit easier to show a lip. So again, we've got that kind of like pinched part there. Women's lips in general goes down a bit at that point, like it's protruding down. Again, notice we're lining it up with the teeth, we're kind of like working that through. Women's lips generally, there's like, I guess, a convex curve, which then descends to, if this is the ends of the mouth, again we're doing that dot like we did there, it curves around again. So it's like convex, concave to convex, I guess is the word for it. And then the ends of the lips, it kind of depends, but I would normally do up and down. And that would be like an upper lip. And then for the lower lip, now women in general, again, I would say, have a darker upper lip and quite a pale lower lip. This is kind of like a difference between men and women when you draw them. Men don't really have this darker upper lip that women generally have. So normally that's protruding, your bottom lip. So let's just put the shadow underneath where the bottom lip's going. And then I would probably just only do the line going down to it. Now when you're shading a lip, it's again kind of like imagining the eyebrows. The skin is like a lot thinner around your lips, so you're kind of seeing where all of the creases are going to be. So the creases would be pulling up like that, wouldn't they? Around the lip there. And then when they get to this point, they've got the bits that are going up directly to that pinched triangle and around. That's where all of your lines would be. And then when it comes to the bottom lip, they're kind of like a lot more, it's not as pinched, I guess, or it's not as thin, it's normally a bit fuller, so the lines are a lot lesser. So you'd have like your line going from there, that's all where the skin would be going. And really the only place you shade would be underneath, because this area is going to be thicker, it's like the nose. This is kind of like now showing us where the bottom of the chin is going to be. So there's like our bit, there's like our chin line. And then we're just going to add the rest of the face on. Draw the rest of the owl, isn't it? But we're going to work around, there's our cheekbone. And we drape the skin round. And depending on how soft you want this person's face to be, you can make it as soft as you want. But this kind of like gives us a nice idea of where are the shapes of the face going to be. And one nice thing to notice here is, if you notice how it goes in around the eye socket, all people have this like little indent either side of the head, which you kind of notice a little bit more when you look from the side. You see that little pinch point there. But it's nice to add when you've got like a front face view of somebody, because their eye socket does do that. And you'll notice it now that I've mentioned it. So that goes around there. If we wanted to give an idea of the ears, kind of in the same way I said that line there, gives an idea of where the ear is going to be. In the same way here, you've got your cheekbone there. I'm just going to go and do a convex shape there, and a loop. There's a rough idea of where an ear is going to be. I'm not actually going to draw ears because I'm going to do the hair next, and they're going to cover them. But that's like a rough idea where a big pair of ears would be. And again, you're just going to play with that idea. So there's our rough face. Last things I would probably add, if you're going to shade the rest kind of in the same way we showed with the nose and with the lips, it's again kind of imagining the shapes protruding. So if the eyes are protruding out from those eyeballs, you can see that there would be this gap here, isn't there, where the bone is going and the eyeball. So that is often shaded. That little space between the two, the blue line and that space, that is the eyeball and the socket. So there's a nice little bit of shading area that you can do. Again, can be nice to add there if you're going to give them a bit of bags under their eyes. Bit of reality. Again, the eyeball isn't that full of space, is it? It ended there, so that's how you get that little space there. And another idea, I guess, is that we've talked about the brow bone under here. We've talked about this is going to stick out. You can shade all of this space under here, depending on how basically protuberant you want the bridge of the nose to be and how like deep you want this area of the eye socket to be. Again, it's kind of like all of your choice, but that's normally why this area is shaded. If you see on someone's face, it's because that area is sticking out, that area is sticking out, and this is all going to be in shadow. So there's our idea. So there's like a rough idea of a face. And now, with our top of our head and everything, we can start doing the idea of hair. So with hair, in general, I mean, I'm just going to really do it for this one in particular. It's like a bare basic rule. I'm just going to make the hair parting here, just down the centre, and then I know where basically the scalp is. And the girl I'm kind of like using has got curly hair, which might not be a bad idea to show this. I'm going to go to a softer pencil, because if it's curls and it's going to be that, it's going to make it a bit easier for me. So we begin at the root of the hair, and then, depending on how we're going to do it, we can pull it out, and if it's curly, maybe it goes out. And probably the easiest way of like imagining hair is in shapes. So there's like, I think, taking strands but putting multiple ones together is probably like the easiest way. That's why I kind of like using a brush pen to do them, because they kind of bulk out the shape a little bit easier. So all I'm doing is like taking that rough area, doing a curl, and the curl's just going to move around the space of this, and the area's going to be thicker. That's just how they work. But by thinking of them more as like blocked shapes, for one we can make them thicker, which is going to make it easier to sketch them out. But it also makes it a lot easier to get the drawing done within like 5 years. Because if you're going to try and plot out every single hair, you're just going to slowly go insane. So don't do it to yourself, just keep it all. It's like big, larger shapes. This is a weird hairdo, I don't even really know anymore. But all I'm going to like just trying to do is block out the shape. God, I hate this hairdo. Why does it look so bad? It's probably because it makes her look really old. So, we've got our rough face. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to work over it, how to focus on the specific lines that matter. So this is more to do with, are you trying to simplify the face? Maybe you're going to do a cartoon, maybe, see what we're doing. So I'm going to take a brush pen. I'm just kind of like focus on the darkest areas of the face so that you can see if you're trying again to simplify and simplify and simplify, how could you further simplify the face, I guess. So where would be the darkest areas on this face? So you could really tell me by now, hopefully, where are the darkest areas and where are the lighter areas. So usually women, this upper eyelid is one of the darkest. And it's nice with a brush pen because you see how you kind of get that little lip. I'd kind of not focus on too many eyelashes like I was saying. Do 3 or 4, it's not really necessary to do loads unless you're doing like heavily makeup, which again, these lower eyelids, only really these couple that are going to be noticeable. Like we see, we know that that line underneath isn't going to be visible. We're just doing the outer iris, and then iris, and outer iris, and just doing that area. One thing I would say as well is it's normally darker under there because of the heaviness of the eyelid. So it can be nice to show that too. So there we go, got those eyelids going. For the eyebrows, we all know that that centre bit is the thickest area. So, a few flicks. Again, the nostrils, darker areas of the face. At most, again at most, thin area of where those are around the nose. That's it, don't really add much more to the nose. I know it's tempting, just try and ignore it. Now it comes to the lips. Again, this is like a big whether you're going to do it. Now I would say the edges of the mouth are one of the darkest areas. So, do those first. The lip line is there, but it's going to be thinner. And I'm just going to simplify the shape even more than I did. Because it's normally quite flat. There is that little shape, but it's quite flat in most people. So we've got that upper line of it. It doesn't really need to be that thick. Under the lip, probably all you need on that. And then we're just going to do this. Let's make her face even softer. One thing I haven't actually mentioned, which probably would be useful, is your neck. Now your neck is about here. It's thicker than you think it is. So if we're doing it realistic, this is this woman's neck. You can go thinner, but that's where her neck would be really. So then, that's our basic face. And this is the reason I like the brush pen, because you can just play a little bit. Really like do the thinner lines, and I know I've just said that, but these would be like 20 hairs in reality. I just like doing curly hair with brush pens, they're just kind of fun. And once you've got these kind of like basic hairs that are going around the front of the face, the ones that are going to be a bit thinner, you can bulk out, because the ones further around the face, for one, you don't care about them as much. They're more there to give the feel of the shape of the woman's face, but also it's not normally where the light is. You normally don't just pick them up. So if we've got that as our rough idea of where the front hairs are going to be, so we know roughly where we're wanting our shape to be. I'm just kind of like doing a messy line. That's roughly where I want those hairs to be. I'm going to bulk it out a bit at the bottom, it looks a bit weird, like so heavy at the top. And now that we know that is our rough shape, we can bulk out the colour. So I'm going to actually swap from this pen, because I like that to be a bit more detailed, and I'm just going to move over to a marker, and then I'm just going to block it out. Honestly, just kind of add in the shapes. This can be a nice way of like, where are my highlights as well, so if you were doing a light source that was like here, you could then start building up where the light source would be. But I'm not like blocking it out, because I would probably, if you've looked at these videos before, I would normally just paint over this or scan it in and then use it. So I'm not really like worrying too much. But let's just say that is the darker side, because we've done that now. And then I just say like, just be messy, play with it for a bit, seeing what looks better. And there she is. So there's our rough idea of how do you do a face. What I'm going to do, again, I'm going to speed it all up for a second, draw out these two faces just as two other rough characters, and then what I'm going to do is get out a watercolour pen, one of these guys. I'm going to fill it with water, and I'm going to show you how to do this kind of shading, but with watercolour. And that will be it really, so hopefully this has been informative, and I'll see you again in a few minutes. And now we've got our two separate sketches. We've just been following the rules that I've just been talking about, but we're just kind of roughing them out, because the next plan is to get these all shaded with watercolours and just show some of the different ways that you can further simplify your sketches, kind of in the same way that we've done with these inks, but this time with paint. Now I'm just going to use one colour paint, because I think that will make it a bit clearer, and then maybe we'll mix it with the next one, I'm not sure. So once you've got a little bit of watercolour paint, so the first thing you do, like always, whenever you do a painting or a drawing or anything, you're going to choose where is your light source coming from. So for her, considering that she's looking up this way, maybe we should make the light come from this direction. So the first thing to do is the depth of the iris, or it's what I'm going to do first. Basically around that eye, it's going to be the thicker part. And one of the things to notice probably here as well is that when we're looking straight on, it's a perfect like ovular like shape. When it looks from the side, it's a lot more elliptical. So it's quite good to try and get that shape going a bit more. Again, we know that this area was darker, didn't we? So we're going to add that with our paint. And really, I'd probably argue get the darker areas sorted first, kind of like we did with the pen. This time again with the watercolours. And it's really moving the things that you've learnt from the pen over to the brush. Again, what's nice here is you don't have to focus as much on lines, you can just add a little bit more water. So now our thicker area is just a thicker amount of paint. Now if the light's coming from this direction, or roughly this space, we know that this area is going to be darker. Now we know that the cheekbone comes underneath here. Depending on how much of a cheekbone we think this person has, we can add a lot. But that helps us guide how much shadow we want to be here. Now you'll notice I'm just kind of going over the hair at this point, and it's because we can just work on top of it. So I'm just really doing more the softer shading areas. Again, the jawbone comes around here. Again, how thick it is depending on you. Area of the body to be a bit thicker or deeper, you just add a bit more paint. And I would say when it comes to faces, the softer areas have to be very light, and the darker areas should be really dark. Like, it feels like you shouldn't do high contrast with faces, and that's how I always felt with it. But really, it's more don't do high contrast in places where there just isn't high contrast. So like we were saying with the nose, we know that the nose, the only dark bit is really going to be this nostril here. And if the light's coming this way, this little area of space here, but again, it's not going to be super dark, is it? It's going to be a lighter colour. So we're just going to use that watered down watercolour just to do that space. So it's just really knowing when do you do a light touch and when do you do a heavy touch. Like if you did all of this in light shades, the eyes aren't going to look as powerful, but then also your nose is going to look a little bit odd. It can be nice to leave like a little bit of lightness above the lips, because the light that would reflect off that top, a little bit above your lips that aren't coloured. And then to just add that little bit of shading underneath where the lip would be. We know that this space would be right underneath the chin, so there would be a bit of skin underneath. Even though we've got this jawbone, the skin isn't like tight against the bone. Like I say, it's all skin draped over, as creepy as it is. It's all the skin draped over the shape. And now that we've got this like rough idea of where this shape would be, and where those different likenesses are going to be, get our thicker amount of paint, maybe make it a bit darker as well. And we're just going to do a similar thing that we did over here. Do the thin lines first, the ones that are going to be around the face. Because we've got the brush, we've got that like really nice ability to do the different line thicknesses of how we want them to be. There you go. So there's like her rough idea, and then like I say, add the darkness where you want to add it at the end. And hopefully like that point I made is coming across about the fact that having those darker areas in contrast can add a lot to it right at the end. So now we've got her going. It's not like a thing of perfection, but we know roughly what we're going for. We can move on to this guy over here. Now finally, I'm just going to add a little bit of pen to this one over here. So I'm just going to add it to, like I was saying about the darkest areas of the image. And I think that's one of the fun things you've got. Once you've started to work out, well, where roughly do these things go on a skull? Certain things like symmetry or seeing the difference between just different types of faces and not having to rely on references really as heavily. All just kind of give you this little option of creating more work that you could be happy with and feels even more unique. When you've got that layer of paint, you can just start adding like different ideas of shading, to be honest. You can just play around a lot more because you've got the base and you don't have to worry about, you know, creating strands like you do here. You can start just playing with stuff a little bit more. And that's really it. I mean, it's not easy to start drawing faces, and I think if you've seen some of the earlier pieces on this channel, I think you probably can see a difference between, say, this face and maybe like the face in Inktober. But at the same time, maybe you can also see the development of that. So when you start doing this, you're going to find a lot of your own individual style, even if you follow a lot of the like rules of this idea, or the things that I'm talking about in this tutorial. You'll draw the skull differently. You'll add different levels of weight and drape the skin, as I've been talking about, over those body parts differently. You're going to focus on different ethnicities. You're going to, you could focus on aliens. You could focus on anything. You could try different techniques. The main purpose I really wanted to come across within this video is to try and link the different parts that you often see in early drawing tutorials where they talk about, well, learn a skull and suddenly you'll be able to draw faces. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just trying to say that these are the ways that you can slowly build up this information and start to understand it, and maybe by seeing that build up and through the different processes, you'll be able to go off and just start doing it and see if it helps at all when you try and, learn how to draw faces. So I hope that was useful in some way, and if you do end up drawing some faces and testing out these techniques, leave me a comment or tag me over on Instagram. I always love to see the work you guys do. I imagine next week it'll be back to more of like a drawing based video, a little less tutorially like this. I just wanted to do something a little bit special. As you might have noticed, we just got past 100 subs on this channel. I mean, hopefully we did. I didn't really want to mention it last week because I just kind of expected it to go below 100, and it probably will in the next couple of weeks. But while it lasts, I thought I'd do something a little bit special for it. So again, hope you're all doing well, and I'll see you again next week.